Update on the shit show that was last Saturday's race. I finally got my new car out onto the track for the first time. This is a car that I have been lazily building since February, and we had 4 or 5 weeks off from racing at Lawrenceburg, so I finally decided to knuckle down and finish it up. We just got the paint sprayed on it the Wednesday before the race. As you can see, I didn't even get the graphics on it yet. I knew pretty much immediately in hot laps that the car was way tight. It just did not rotate into the corners like my old car did. And the suspension setup, the tire size, pretty much everything on it is the same. To be fair, my old car has hit the wall 3 times pretty hard, and it's been on a frame rack, and it's been beaten and bashed and straightened out, so I know that car's not straight. I didn't think it was going to be that much of a difference, especially because these cars scale pretty similarly. It was a pretty big surprise. I did what I could between the heat race and the hot laps to try and loosen the car up a little bit, and it didn't make a difference in the areas I wanted it to. The car was still really tight, and all I ended up doing was introducing some snap oversteer from mid-corner or just at corner exit that it didn't have before. And it got a little unpredictable because it didn't really make sense why or when it decided to do that. I think I may have figured that out, which I will cover here in a minute. But suffice to say, the handling was poor. The power was good. The engine performed really well. But there are definitely a lot of changes that need to happen to that car. The steering was very tight due to the tire sizes that I had chosen in the front. And we normally don't run power steering, but I am strongly considering running power steering again on this car because I couldn't keep the car under control in certain circumstances. There was a point where I was racing next to Landon really aggressively, and I came out of turn 2, and the car lurched to the left, and I put it full lock to the right, and it went off the track, and I ran through the infield and came back onto the track at the bottom of turn 3. It was terrible. Truth be told, I should have pulled this car off a lot earlier in the night because the unpredictability of it, but I was stubborn and continued to race it all night, and it ended up costing me. This was probably the worst night racing that both of us have had in quite a long time. And really, I only say this because both of us ended up in the infield. I hate being that guy. I don't want to be the guy to slow down the show. I don't want to end up in the infield, obviously, but it happened. Both cars. My car went off on the white flag lap, which really chapped my ass. I guess I'll dive into that first. So, I was racing along in the feature, just trying to keep the car in one piece and trying to stay out of everyone's doors. And we had a caution. We had a few cautions, and this was the very last caution of the night, I'm pretty sure. I'm slowing down somewhere on the front stretch, and I hear a pretty loud pop, just a real quick boom. And I felt it. I kind of wiggled the car back and forth, and I gave it some throttle, and I hit the brakes, and everything felt okay to me. So we lined back up, and we went green again. And I took off, and everything felt fine for most of that whole first lap. Then I started to smell some transmission fluid. And one thing with these manuals is the factory spec says 2 quarts, and if you put full 2 quarts in it, it all blows out the vent at the top. You put about 1.5 quarts, and it might blow a little trans fluid out. I thought maybe on some, blew a little fluid out of it, and I was smelling it. I come around a corner, and I see some fluid on the track, and I'm like, that's probably my car. And just as soon as I saw that, the car started losing power, so I coasted into the infield, and just as soon as I got past the wall, it shut down and pretty much stopped moving. Earlier in the night, I had noticed, well, I had mentioned in this video even, that the car was kind of unpredictable in spots, and it was a little darty, and I had snap oversteer, and I believe that my differential had been coming apart all night long, and when it finally went pop, it decided to come through the case of the trans and enter the bell housing. And it blew a pretty good sized hole. The cross pin is loose in there, and all that shrapnel ended up hooking in the side of the clutch, and it broke off the tab there. And obviously, it just beat the hell out of everything in there. And we took some chunks off the brand new flywheel. The friction disc actually looks fine. I thought instead of wheel spin during the night that I had clutch slippage, and it's a little dark in some spots, but I don't think it was slipping as bad as I anticipated. But shrapnel ended up catching the starter and completely killed the bell housing on this trans. I thought the clutch would come apart because when we looked in the pits, I saw this big old crack in the bell housing and just assumed that that was clutch slip all night and that thing disintegrated. But nope, ended up being the differential. I may be able to salvage the gears out of that transmission. The clutch is garbage, and I don't know if I'm going to use that flywheel or not. I'm going to look it over real good, but I'll probably just end up getting a new one. The engine, unfortunately, a piece of that bell housing and differential rode around behind the flywheel and chipped a big chunk off the back of the block and messed up the area where the rear main seal goes and hurt the crank. So it might be a while before that setup gets reassembled. I haven't decided yet if I want to just slap another stock bottom end 2.2 into this new car and work on getting the setup better for it so that when I do get the good drivetrain reassembled, the car will be ready for it. Or if I'm just going to park this and pull out old trusty and finish the season with that. We'll see what happens. We have a few weeks off from Lawrenceburg, so I don't know. I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. Alex's car was doing great all night long. We had done some stuff to it on that previous off time as well and freshened up a few things and tried a few other changes, and the car was working well. He had worked his way up to third place in the feature and was working on second place, and the car just shut down on him. And this was a stupid one. I mean, I kicked myself in the ass for this. When we build these cars, I make standalone wiring harnesses for them, and I simplify a lot of stuff. And I run switch panels, and then we run power down the side of the car to the battery wherever we put them. And on both of these cars, we've put them right here behind the driver's seat. We put nut certs on the side of the car so that we can remove this panel to access it. It's not in right now, but fuel pump relay would have been right there. Oh, there it is. So fuel pump relay, my main vehicle relay, just out of convenience sake. This white wire that runs along this rocker here happened to rub through because it was underneath the power wire here, and it shorted out and killed power to the relay. That's the trigger wire from the computer that tells that fuel pump relay to turn on. And when you apply voltage to the chassis on these cars, or sorry, through the ground circuit even, it tends to kill the ignition coil. So we ended up with a double whammy on his car. That wire shorted through, and then the ignition coil died, and his car just shut down. We slapped a new coil on it, and we manually triggered the pump. It fires right up. The biggest reason that was such a stupid mistake is every other car, we put loom, plastic conduit, on that wire. You can see in my car that it all loomed up, and we use these little, let's see if I can find one. You can see that rivet there. We P-clamp them down to keep them in place. And I think on Alex's car, we were out of conduit at that very moment. So we just ran it and forgot about it. And of course, it came back to bite us in the ass. So, very, very stupid mistake. Live and learn. His car will definitely be back out there when we can have that thing fixed in 10 minutes. Not this car. A little more complex on that one. I mean, I can take any of this crap over here and slap it together and get this car back out there, but I'm going to have to make a decision here on what to do with it. But that's pretty much that. We are still, well, I am fourth in points because I turned a few more laps than Alex in the feature. And Alex bumped down to fifth. And I believe third, fourth, and like third through sixth, I think, are all 10 to 15 points away from each other. So it's still a real tight season. So it's not really enough to be upset about. I mean, it sucks having to do all this work again, but it is what it is. Hopefully, I can come back out with this car and have it not be a complete trash pile. It was somewhat competitive while it was running good. Maybe I can make it steer next time. But that's it for now. I'll probably make another update when I crack that transmission open, and then if I make a game plan on an engine for it. See you in the next video.